FTX gets the green light to sell its stake in the AI startup Anthropic. Reddit says it invested part of its excess cash in Bitcoin and Ether. And Muneeb Ali of Trust Machines breaks down how spot Bitcoin ETFs are influencing crypto's price action. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Tanea McKeel. Digital currencies are lower to end the week. Bitcoin ticked lower by less than 1% by noon Eastern, trading above the $51,000 mark. Ether also in the red today, pulling back by more than 1% in the past 24 hours. And Solana's down as well, but keeping above $100. For the week, Bitcoin was lower by 1.5% by noon Eastern and on pace to snap a 4-week win streak and its longest such streak since November. Ether outperforming it, however, heading for a more than 5.5% weekly gain and poised for its 4th up week in a row and longest winning streak since November. And taking a quick look over at Wall Street, I want to highlight a few crypto trading related stocks like Block, Coinbase, and Robinhood. Shares of Block surging by midday after the company reported a surprise profit in the 4th quarter last year, including $66 million in gross profit from Bitcoin. It also reported a strong outlook for the year. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. A judge in Delaware approved FTX's proposal to sell its stake in the AI startup Anthropic to pay back its customers and creditors. Per yesterday's ruling, FTX can now sell its shares after the crypto firm reached a compromise in court with a group of customers that had initially opposed the sale. About 8% of Anthropic is owned by FTX, according to court documents. That purchase was made by Sam Bankman-Fried, its disgraced former CEO. Based on Anthropic's last reported valuation, FTX's stake is worth an estimated $1.4 billion. Compare that to the $500 million SBF invested back in 2021. Now, the group that initially opposed the sale argued that FTX didn't actually own the shares because they were purchased with money embezzled from FTX customer deposits. Yesterday, they agreed to move forward with the sale as long as they can argue later that customers own the money that would be generated from the future sale. Reuters is reporting that an FTX attorney said in court that the bankrupt company intends to pay back customers using the sale proceeds and that it has enough cash to repay any specific group of customers that can convince a court that they owned the Anthropic shares. The lawyer added that FTX currently has $6.4 billion in cash. FTX expects to pay back all customers in full, although the repayments will be calculated based on November 2022 crypto prices. That's when FTX filed for bankruptcy during a prolonged downturn in the crypto market. Next, a Montenegro court ruled that Do Kwon should be extradited to the U.S. to face trial on fraud charges instead of his native South Korea. According to the Associated Press, Kwon's lawyers have 3 days to appeal the ruling by the High Court, and that the appeals court will have the final word in the case. The Wall Street Journal reported that a local attorney for the disgraced former crypto executive plans to appeal. Both the U.S. and South Korea have been trying to extradite Do Kwon in an effort to prosecute the co-founder of Terraform Labs on charges stemming from the collapse of Terra USD and Luna. The ruling this week in Montenegro could make it possible for Do Kwon to be in court for the SEC's trial against him over an alleged $40 billion crypto fraud. That trial is scheduled to begin on March 25th. Finally, social media company Reddit revealed in its IPO filing yesterday that it invested part of its excess cash in Bitcoin and Ether. That makes the company one of the few firms that directly holds crypto on its balance sheet. Others include Elon Musk's Tesla and Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy. Yesterday, Reddit filed its IPO prospectus with the SEC after a years-long run-up. In the filing, Reddit said it holds crypto and experiments with blockchain technology. The company added that on top of the investments, it also acquired Ether and Polygon's Matic token as a form of payment for sales of certain virtual goods. Reddit also wrote that as of December 31st, 2023, the company did not hold digital assets other than Bitcoin and Ether for treasury purposes, and that its investment policy requires approval by its board of directors for any crypto investments. The firm said its investments in crypto for treasury purposes are limited to Bitcoin, Ether, and any other cryptocurrency that the SEC, CFTC, and other regulatory agencies identify as likely not being a security. Reddit plans to trade on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol RDDT, and its market debut is expected next month. All right, let's talk more about crypto markets for our main story. I spoke with Muneeb Ali of Trust Machines about the latest moves in Bitcoin and Ether. As a co-founder of Stacks, he also weighs in on the growing trend of Bitcoin Layer 2s as a focus of this year. I want to start with some price action, and I'm curious about what you make of the price action in the crypto markets this week. And let's talk about Bitcoin specifically. We're seeing a lot of moves up and down. We had a couple of catalysts this week, but so I do want your initial reaction to those moves, but also want you to zoom out a little bit, because I think that the kind of moves that we're seeing since the launch of these Bitcoin ETFs last month has been a little bit more interesting. It seems like it's changed a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think the Bitcoin ETFs have been a game changer, like for sure, because I think if you just look at the inflows that are coming in, the numbers are extremely strong. Like I think they are much better than what people expected them to be. So there is a ton of demand from traditional financial institutions, traditional sources of capital that want exposure to Bitcoin. So I think the ETF launch, I think, has been extremely strong. And as I said, a game changer. So basically, what's happening is that there are different levels, even how these financial institutions operate, right? Like right now, they're mostly working on inbound demand. They aren't even going outbound, right? Like imagine the marketing reach and distribution channels that a BlackRock or other large institutions would have. They haven't even turned on any of that machinery, right? Like it's mostly like inbound demand right now. And the third level is typically when they can actually start making allocations for their clients automatically, right? So because they pick the portfolio and they can just have an automatic allocation to Bitcoin, and that's like level 3. We are operating at level 1 right now, right? And the kind of inflows that we are seeing, they just speak for themselves. So Bitcoin now has a clear demand on a very scarce asset, and that asset is about to get even more scarce with Bitcoin halving. And I think that's basically my takeaway. That we know from previous data that whenever Bitcoin goes up, it sort of like pulls the rest of the industry with it. And I firmly believe that Bitcoin ETFs are playing that role. And some of that is now, we can see that in other assets as well, because Bitcoin is sort of going up. I think it's sort of interesting that it's actually not, like in the grand scheme of things, it's not moving that much. It's like sort of like stable at like that 51,000 sort of a range. And if I would take, like, I don't have any inside knowledge on this, but if I would have to take a guess, I do think that ETFs might be sort of like, managing their demand reasonably, because they probably want to buy in this range for as long as they can. So even if they're getting more demand, they're probably being more sophisticated about it, not to like suddenly just unload that much demand on the market.
And if we could talk about Ether for a second, it's in the red this morning, but it's been a big outperformer this year and this week. What do you think is driving that? We are hearing a lot about the excitement and the hype around a potential spot Ether ETF. Do you agree with that as being sort of the driving narrative here? And how do you see that path to an eventual approval of spot ETFs as compared to what we just experienced with the lead up towards the Bitcoin ETF approvals?
Yeah, so I think the Ethereum thing was probably like long overdue. If anything, it was very surprising that Ethereum was lacking so much for such a long time. And I think it was a very interesting dynamic, and I think that dynamic is probably going to play out more later in the year as well. So basically, what's happening is Bitcoin, as usual, is leading the charge because of the ETFs, but also because of Bitcoin L2s as well. There's a ton of interest in Bitcoin L2s. And then typically Ethereum would follow. Ethereum would be the fast follower if any sort of like interest goes up in Bitcoin. And that wasn't happening. In fact, Solana was actually getting a lot more attention. I think Solana went from its lows to trading at like around a 40 billion market cap now. And I think it saw a lot of growth. It was probably taking a lot of attention that would have otherwise gone to Ethereum. It was actually going to Solana and some of the other projects. So Ethereum was for a very long time like not moving or not getting a lot of attention. So I think it was sort of like long overdue. It is the second largest asset. A lot of people use it and so on. So I think it's in my view it's sort of like caught up, right? And it was actually surprising that it took it such a long time to catch up, which to me is an indicator that the world has changed for Ethereum, because a couple of years ago, the Bitcoin L2 category just completely didn't exist. So with the Bitcoin L2 category coming up, it's emerging very rapidly. And the alt L1s like Solana, Avalanche, and others, they have actually matured a lot more than they were before. So some of the interest that would have otherwise just gone directly to Ethereum, I think now it's getting divided between two almost like new categories, the Bitcoin L2s and the more mature assets like Solana now.
And actually, let's stay with L2s. If you could take a step back with me for a second, remind me and our audience why Bitcoin L2s. We've had all of this focus on Ethereum and the Ethereum alternatives. Why build on Bitcoin versus one of those other networks?
Yeah, so I think basically the mental model that I use is you should separate BTC, the asset, from Bitcoin, the rails, right? Like Bitcoin, the technology. And BTC, the asset, has clearly proven itself, right? Like it's the pristine asset, it's the thing that everyone sort of like understands that this is like sound money. It's digital gold. It's a hedge against like inflation or things going wrong in the financial markets. And I think Bitcoin is probably the only asset that has established itself like that and has gained that much institutional adoption. So now we have something like $1 trillion of capital that mostly just sitting there. And traditionally, it's been sort of like pretty hard to program Bitcoin and to actually build things on top, like kind of things that you see built on Ethereum and Solana and so on. And I think in the recent years, and this is some of the work that we have done at the Stacks project, and there are others, Bitcoin L2s out there that have done this, there have been like significant advancements and breakthroughs. The Bitcoin L2s are now like possible, right? And people see them coming, it's becoming a category. There are tons of new projects getting funded, similar to what we saw on top of Ethereum as well. So remember that even on Ethereum, most of the usage is now on Ethereum L2s because Ethereum L1 can't take that many users and traffic. So so Ethereum L2s are something like a $70, $80 billion market. And I think Bitcoin L2s are very new. They're like a $5 billion market right now. And some people, sort of like project that Bitcoin L2s should be bigger than Ethereum L2s because there's more capital to work with. There's $1 trillion in capital, and programmers are coming in. They're building all sorts of like lending protocols, decentralized exchanges using these Bitcoin L2s, and it's a very exciting time to be in Bitcoin right now.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World this week. We'll be back again on Monday, and we'll see you then.